Welcome to Wednesday Night Live, the Educated Homebuyer, where Josh and I answer your mortgage and real estate questions right here on the interwebs and help you guys become the educated homebuyer. So, Josh, as we were discussing prior to coming on here, not really a lot happening week over week. Interest rates, more or less blah. Housing market, more or less blah. We do got some more inventory, or we do have some more inventory, rather, which we're going to take a look at here in just a minute. But what should we talk about here while we wait for people to jump in?
Well, this week was the calm before the storm, which we'll get into in the slides. The next week is pretty crazy because I was looking going, hey, we got PCE coming up, and then we'll have a gap before we get jobs and CPI. But PCE, for whatever reason, is squeezed right up just 1 week before PCE, or before the jobs report next week. So we've been seeing some sort of coiling in the bonds, just trading sideways, but within that nice downtrend that we've seen over the last month or so. But the next week is when it all hits the fan. Hopefully in our direction.
Yeah. So tomorrow we got jobless claims. We got GDP, which will also come out tomorrow. Both have the potential to move the market a little bit. And then PCE will be on Friday. Also another potential to move the market. And then next week we follow it up with all the job stuff. So the next week, kind of starting Friday, I guess a little more data heavy, but that has the impact more or less to impact interest rates more so than anything else. But we're going to take a look at what's happening here nationwide, what's happening here locally. And while we're doing that, though, guys, if you have questions, put them in the chat now. And that way we can just hit them as we move out and keep the show moving along. So, Josh.
First off, Vern correctly pointed out that Jeb got a new look. He went out and copied Josh. He said, Josh shaved and he looks pretty, so I'm going to try and look pretty also.
Pretty was not the word I would have used to describe you, but it was a new look. Yes, it was getting warm with the beard and a bit out of control, to be completely honest. And, we're new. I said I wasn't shaving until interest rates got below 4%. So we're just going to pretend like they're there. But no, let's do this, Josh, and dive into charts. Can you hit that chart there and bring it up so we are looking at it?
Yes, sir.
And as we do that, I'm actually going to pull something else up here.
You have extra data that you don't share with us, like
I have the notes from our friend Mike Simonson over at Altos and Housing Wire that just kind of goes over the numbers in a little bit more detail, his context on everything. So essentially what we have is 634,000 single family homes currently on the market nationwide at the moment. That's up 2.2% for the week and 38% more than last year. And that takes us into what's happening here locally. So Orange County. So these charts are, again, if you're new here, these are charts that Josh and I started tracking data back at the early part of 2023, basically January 1st. And it's till now. We should have done this a long time prior, but essentially you can kind of see the trend here. Orange County inventory now sitting at 3,039 properties, which is the highest level that we've seen since December of 2022. Again, not that big of a difference. You're not seeing it really impact the market, at least at the moment, and more so in the higher price points, but which we'll dig into. But it's up 2.73% week over week, and Huntington Beach sitting at 181, which is up 1.1% week over week. And in fact, we were sitting higher levels than these back in Huntington back in October, November of last year. So we still haven't peaked above that, but with interest rates being higher, property sitting on the market a little bit longer, time will definitely tell there, Josh. So this is looking at new listings nationwide, 72,000 new listings unsold this week. That's basically unchanged for the week, but is 13% more than last year. Immediate sales are down. So total seller volume is only 4% more than a year ago. So again, this is the time of year where you start to see a little bit of slowdown in the market just because of the timing.
I always like looking at these while you're talking and just seeing what else jumps out. If you look at the three red lines, that shows 22, 23, and 24. So everyone's talking here recently about inventory being up year over year. And you can see this. New listings are up year over year, partially why we're higher, but still well below 2022. And that's because that was the spike or the shock of people going, uh-oh, my window's closing, and hurriedly bringing homes to market. This is still a normalizing market. And we're still trying to figure out what in the heck the new normal is.
And you know what I find also interesting in looking at this, Josh, is how seasonality every single year has these big dips. Like we're coming up on one here really soon in the month of July. It probably starts with July 4th. You probably see less activity there, and it looks like it almost carries through all the way until second or third week into July, and then you start to see an increase again. Just less people listing kind of every single year during this period of time. And holiday season, people are out traveling, people are vacationing, doing that sort of thing. And then you also have another one coming September. And, again, it just, when you go back and look year over year over year, and you always have them, there's something to be said about that. All right. So let's take that and look at week over week. So we went from 539,000 homes up to 634, as we mentioned. That 2.2% increase. Last year, same time, we were sitting at 460,000 homes, and that's where that 38% difference is. And right now, we're sitting at the highest level of inventory that we've seen in the last couple of years nationwide. Now, this is new contracts pending, so supply growth is slowing, but demand is essentially doing the same thing, is also slowing. There were only 67,000 new contracts pending for single-family homes this week, 2% fewer than last week, and 3.3% fewer contracts started than the same week a year ago. That's going to take us into median home price. So median home price of single-family homes on the market sitting just under 455,000, basically unchanged from last week and unchanged from last year as well. And then our last one, which we always look at, is price cuts, price reductions. So now sitting at 36.9% of the homes have had some sort of price cut. And we've talked about this typically any given year, regardless of the year. Somewhere between 30 to 33% of homes have some sort of price reduction. So a little bit higher than that, but nothing too crazy.
Well, Jeb, compare that to, we always talk about all real estate is local. We looked at the local report just this afternoon, the Orange County report, and they were showing 53% of homes sold for over list price. So this is showing
in the month of May, just in the month of May. Yeah.
In the month of May. So the most recent data that he has available, and looking at this, so the story is different, and you have to know the data for your market to know, is there pressure on you to act now? Is there time for you to wait and kind of see what's going to happen? And I've got a slide in here that's going to kind of give you a different look nationwide of what that looks like, but you have to know the data in your area. Nationwide doesn't do you any good. If you're not in Orange County doesn't do you any good. You need to know down to your county, down to your zip, and sometimes even in neighborhoods with inside of your zip.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a chart that I found interesting, Josh. This came from Resi Club. Just shows home price growth by decade. And you can see going back to the 1990s up to now, 51% in the first 4 years of the 2020s or so. We're not even through the entire fourth year yet. And we're up 51%. So big numbers there. Even if we stayed flat from this point forward, we'd still be higher than the previous 3 decades. But that just kind of gives you some context, comparatively speaking, to what is quote unquote more normal versus where we are now. Yeah.
When I saw this chart, the most batshit crazy thing that jumped out to me is the 2000s.
Oh, so the major hump.
that giant hump, because you're like, he said, if you read the article that goes along with it, he's like, hey, we've already achieved more appreciation so far this decade than any of the previous 3 decades. And I'm like, well, how can that possibly be? That red line goes way off the chart up at the top. And they're like, oh yeah, and then it bit a big dive down here. So we've beat the dead horse enough talking about why this market is different. Doesn't mean that it can't correct, but it is different than that market. And the biggest, easiest way for you to see that is we've got 35% more appreciation to get back to the same level of appreciation they saw. And the different part about that is from the late 90s was a downturn. It was either several years of flat or a dip for us in Southern California. So when you're coming off of a low and then you have a run, the run looks even bigger. Well, from 2015 to 2020, we already had, it was like a running start. We were looking at 4, 5, 6% appreciation year over year for the last 4 or 5 years. And then it took off. So a very interesting chart. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out the rest of the decade.
Absolutely. So the spread between the 30-year and the 10-year is something that we've talked about a lot in the last couple of years, but not so much recently. But we did start to see that spread normalize a little bit, and more recently, I guess it's kind of just flattened.
The interesting thing about HousingWire looking at it this way, what it's been across the last 3 years, is we talk about it's normalized, it's got better, but not really. We're just a tiny bit better. So I wanted to actually look at the actual chart here, and we're at like a 2.6 spread right now. And I run this using Optimal Blue versus the Freddie Mac number, just because Freddie Mac only publishes once a week and it's already out of date when it comes out. Optimal Blue is there more frequently, but that 2.6 spread, if you look back here historically, 2%, well below 2% a lot of the time, but 2% is a reasonable number. So there are reasons, without going into a 20-minute dissertation on this, why it's elevated and may remain elevated. It should normalize and get back much closer to where we were. People love pointing this out. We look at the data and we're talking about, we did the forecast episode this week, came out on Tuesday, just yesterday, Jeb, and we're talking about the big years, 2020 and 2021. We had more than 6 million annualized home sales, and we're looking at just over 4 million is going to be this year, and it was that last year. Well, this is how it translates into mortgages. This is purchase applications just over the last 3 years. So 2022 started out hot, just like the previous 2 years, and tailed off by the end of the year. 2023 had a better start and tailed off towards the end of the year, which is seasonal. It's to be expected. And then 2024, we're just sitting here at a very low level. So I wanted to throw this chart in here. This came across in an email that you had today, Jeb, and showing 2023 actual mortgage originations, 1.2 trillion purchases, 238 billion of refis. That is a tiny refi number. And if we look 2024, not going to be a whole lot better, and pretty predictable, right? Without rates coming down, there's not a whole lot motivating people to refinance unless they have high consumer debt and need to consolidate it. So they are forecasting this. iEmergent is forecasting 370 billion for next year, 538 billion for 2026. But just continued improvement, but nothing major. So if we're looking forward, is there going to be a big spike in home sale volume? Probably not. Is there going to be a big spike in mortgage volume? Probably not. This isn't, we're probably near the lows, but not likely to be massively different moving forward. So Jeb, this is what we led off the show with. We've got a big week ahead of us. So tomorrow, GDP and the weekly jobless claims. The day after that, PCE. Monday gets the ISM manufacturing PMI. Tuesday gets us JOLTS. Wednesday gets us the S&P services PMI and the ISM PMI and ADP jobs. We all get Thursday off for the 4th of July, and then we come back Friday with the non-farm payroll data. So let's look at what that is likely to look like. GDP for the fourth quarter was at 3.4. It's forecast at 1.4. We've got some previous looks at this. So they started with the Q1 number at 1.6, revised it down to 1.3. They're thinking it'll come in at 1.4. Probably not going to get a surprise there, but it could surprise to the upside or the downside. Jobless claims, the weekly jobless claims are less important than the monthly, but they are an important indicator of what's happening week over week. And we had 238 weekly jobless claims last week, 238,000, forecasting 236 for tomorrow. But when you look at it, just a month ago, this is the last 5 weeks, we went 215, 219, 229, 242, 238, and forecasting 236. So it's not a huge number. It's not a problematic number, but it's definitely trending up, which tells us we're seeing a weakening job market, not a weak job market. PCE is the big one, Jeb, on Friday. This is the Cleveland Fed? It's Virginia Fed. One of the regional Feds does a nowcast on this. So in the yellow up there, the median forecast, that's a consensus that the Wall Street Journal does. They poll a bunch of experts and economists. They are predicting 2.6 for the headline year over year, which is down from 2.7 last month, and the core down to 2.6 as well, down from 2.8. So a bigger improvement. And when you look at that nowcast, the Fed is projecting 0.07 for the month and 0.10 on the core. And the year over year, they're pretty much right in line with this, 2.62 and 2.56, remembering that they round. So I don't think we're going to get a shock from that. If anything, if we were betting, I think it's going to come in right on the number. But if we get a surprise, it would likely be to the good side for us. So we've gone through this a million times, Jeb, but this is just a pretty clear chart of showing U.S. government interest payments as a percentage of tax receipts. That number is just not sustainable. We're well above where we were in 2009, which is the middle of the great financial crisis, 12%, 13% unemployment, very low tax receipts, but a much lower deficit and much lower interest rates at that time. So we know that over time, something has to change. The government has to stop spending more money than they have, or rates have to moderate, or preferably a combination of both would be ideal. So Jeb, here's the chart I was talking about, and this one's fun. So this is the Realtor.com. They have a hotness score by Metro. As you can see, most of California here is pretty good. Other portions of the West Coast, but we talked about the Gulf Coast and the South being softer relative. And then you talk about the Northeast. Holy geez, the Northeast is on fire.
So what makes a hotness score? Is it just the number of people looking at properties?
I believe it's volume of sales and demand relative to supply, I believe is how they're measuring it. Okay. But that is a good question. But it's Realtor.com's proprietary method. So we go from the real estate hotness score, Jeb. I thought we could look at this. This is the male versus female population ratio. So if you are out here in California, it's pretty much 1-to-1. So you've got decent odds. But if you go down south, we got a cooler housing market. You're likely to find a home, and there are more men than women. So if you're a woman, maybe you go down south and you buy a house, and you can find a man and a house if a man is what you're looking for.
Or you could go to North Dakota if you're in search of females, and you're going to be outnumbered a bit, right?
Yeah.
Or is that the other way around?
Well, it's 1.05 men for every female. So you're in trouble.
You would less.
Yeah. And the reason for that
makes sense. I see that now. Yes. Yeah.
It's the oil wildcatters up there. And look at Alaska. You certainly don't want to go to Alaska if you're a man. You gotta fight tooth and nail over every available lady.
Yeah. You've got to go to like South Carolina or Alabama, somewhere in there. I mean, both great states, based on.
The funny thing is, Jeb, the data that went along with this, they said mortality. So men have a higher mortality rate than women, and lower income people have higher mortality rates. So lower income levels throughout most of the South. So the men die earlier because of that. So just information to consider.
Yeah.
We're just flying all over the place. So we've been showing you this chart for a while. We sort of moderated to the middle of that channel, not to be unexpected. If you look at those two white lines, if you're watching this on YouTube and not listening on the podcast, I threw that in there because we had a pretty well-defined range until this morning, and we blew that range. And I say blew that range. We're only up 5 basis points today. So we should hold that level where we're at right now. A 432 is a pivot, likely to hold, and we'll see that continued downtrend, barring something unforeseen in terms of super hot GDP, super solid low weekly jobless claims, hot PCE, which is, as you've seen, it's pretty forecastable. I would expect that we're going to continue riding that trend down, but the next 7 days are going to tell us what that looks like. In terms of interest rates, Mortgage News Daily is reporting 30-year fixed at 7.06, FHA at 6.51, VA at 6.52. You should be able to do slightly better than all of that, assuming you're a well-qualified borrower. 680 FICO and above for FHA, 740 and above for conventional loan with a decent down payment.
All right, good stuff, Josh. If you can click us back to there we go. So we got some questions here. Got some, regular viewers in the chat as well. Going to start going through some stuff here. We've got, so Omar's asking predictions for rates and house prices next year. We actually talk a little bit about, predictions. In fact, we talk a lot about predictions in the episode that dropped on the podcast yesterday. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Apple. You can find it here on YouTube, on the Educated Homebuyer podcast channel, where we talk about the housing market. And believe Josh actually asked about 2025 in that forecast. So I think 2025 is going to see lower interest rates. I think it's going to see, home prices kind of moving like they're moving now, but kind of moving sideways more so than anything else. Up 1-2% is my prediction. But I've been wrong before. I thought that same thing back in 2022, and home prices went up 8, 9, 10%. So I just don't think you're not going to see a big decline for the reasons that we talk about all the time. So, Josh, let's take a look here. There was a question that I thought we could start with. This one is asking about VA loans, and it says, "Can I use my dad's VA? Not a first-time home buyer. My dad has passed. So, what is the rule if you have a family member that was a veteran? Is there any opportunity to use that?"
Only the veteran and a spouse can borrow. So even if your dad was alive and you both wanted to buy, you cannot use his VA benefit together and do a zero down. Now, that being said, you can do a split entitlement. So I know you're not asking this, but some of you may be thinking this. A veteran and a non-spouse veteran can buy together. But the way that the zero down works with VA is the VA guarantees 25% of that loan. So in this instance, that veteran borrower is buying 50% of the home. The VA is going to guarantee 25% of that, or roughly 12.5%. The non-veteran borrowing with them would have to come up with a 12.5% down payment to cover the guarantee. So there's a 25% guarantee of the entire thing. On top of that, that loan has to go to the VA for prior approval. So 99% of VA loans, the lender is going to approve them. The VA just insures them well after closing. This situation, once your lender underwrites the loan and approves it, they have to send that entire package to VA for prior approval. Really, the only situation where a deceased veteran, their entitlement can be used to purchase a home is in very rare instances, a spouse of a deceased veteran. They generally have to have died during wartime or due to wartime injuries. So very, very specific, very, very unlikely, but that's the only person who can use a veteran's VA benefit after they've passed.
All right. Smart Fox followed up and said they walked in Huntington this past weekend, was hoping to run into us. Just understand you would never see Josh out there. Josh doesn't leave his house. Josh is a hermit. I'm out and about on the boardwalk. I run. I'm at the beach. Josh, he's there watching YouTube. He just watches our videos. That's the reason all of our videos have views on them. If you see a video that has more than 10 views, it's because Josh has watched it more than 10 times. That's it. We don't have any other viewers. No, in all seriousness, you could find me out there somewhere. I'm out there all the time. Mina is a regular here and always giving us $5. So thank you, Mina. Says, are there any upsides to selling a home in October or November, or is the spring historically the best time to sell a home? Historically speaking, if we're talking historically, spring is typically where the most appreciation is gained. We've done an episode on this where we've talked about, if when you're looking to purchase, you're typically going to pay more for a home in the second half of the year because the majority of the appreciation was gained in the first half of the year. Now, that doesn't mean October, November can't be a good time to sell. Last year, inventory peaked here locally in November. And that's a question we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Somebody else had a similar question, but it really depends on what happens with rates, where inventory is at the time. If you saw interest rates come down considerably, this year, October and November could be a great time to put your home on the market. But if you're talking traditionally speaking, I would say the spring is usually the best, but it also depends on your market, right? If you're in, Minneapolis and it's, in November and it's minus 25 degrees outside, which I don't even know if it can be that time of year, but all of those things, the seasonality definitely plays into market. So just keep that in mind. The spring is usually the time when things are thawing out. People are kind of gearing up, for the weather to change and home prices kind of follow that market. upwards in most cases. Josh, there was a second question here that I said I was going to mention, and that was Dave asking, what month does inventory usually peak at? So inventory typically peaks sometime now, real soon. I mean, if we pull back up that chart, Josh, you're gonna
I got it. Give me a
throw it
second.
on there. Yeah, and throw us back on. If you look at this chart here, I mean, peaking is sometime August-ish, sometime mid-August, depending on the year. I mean, you've had it peak as early as about now, and sometimes, but I would say towards the end of summer is when we start to see it peak. And I don't think this year is going to be any different unless rates continue to move up, but I don't see that being the case. Josh, what would you consider a reasonable percentage down for a conventional loan? Reasonable is all relative, but what's a good amount to put down on a conventional loan?
Any number that allows you to qualify and be comfortable with the monthly payment. We do 3% down conventional. We do a lot of 5 and 10% down conventional. We do a lot of 25, 40% down. Listener to the podcast today, Jeb, just got them connected to you. They're putting 50% down. They're fortunate in a good position with a big down payment. So the number is going to be dependent on you. There's not a number that someone can tell you this is a reasonable number. We've had listeners to the show here buy with a 3% down conventional, and they were very, very happy. If we're looking at a conventional loan, the question you got to ask yourself is one or two borrowers. If we're putting less than 20% down, one or two borrowers, and where are everyone's credit scores? So hopefully they're over 780 and there's two borrowers. And if that's the case, you're going to have very low mortgage insurance. You're going to get the best interest rates available. When we get lower, say you have a 680 credit score, mortgage insurance is going to be unpleasant. So you're going to want to put as big a down payment as possible to minimize that, or possibly look at FHA.
All right. Let's see. This isn't a question, but it's a comment that I want to point out there just because I'm somewhat familiar with the market. Tanisha says it's crazy because I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and the housing market's out of control. So earlier we showed that map with the hotness score, and Charlotte didn't really show as a super hot market, but here she's saying it is crazy. I have a lot of friends that live in Charlotte, being that I'm from North Carolina, and it's, I have actually friends that are real estate agents there as well, and they're talking about just how nuts the market is there. And there's a big influx, right? So you got a lot of people moving from all parts of the country moving to North Carolina because, seasonally it's pretty moderate when it comes to temperature and affordability, and it's I would say 7 months out of the year it's the weather's pretty damn good, but the other 5 months suck. So that's why I moved to California. And this year we've had 12 months of sucky weather. So, North Carolina wins in the last year. Saba says, not much new listings this week in Orange County. Can it be because of 4th of July holiday? No, I don't think new listings in Orange County have been trending up. So I wouldn't say not many new listings. I think we're just kind of continuing that trend. I think we were up like 2.3% week over week or so. It's reasonable for this time of year. This is when new listings start to slow down. So I wouldn't expect a big increase in inventory going forward. You're probably going to peak here in the next couple of weeks, and it's definitely going to slow down around the holiday. But if I were listing a property, I would have not listed it now thinking that July 4th is next Thursday. But if you wanted to come to me and say, hey, I want to list next week, I would say, let's wait, because next week is the actual holiday, and you're going to see less traffic. But it could be, if you're in Huntington Beach, it could also be a good time to put your home on the market just because more people out, more tourists in town, more people looking, especially when you have good weather and that sort of thing here locally. Josh, what do we have? Go ahead.
I was going to say, Saba had a follow-up that kind of goes back to what she was asking, and then also they were asking, and what we've talked about a little before. On average, how much over asking are properties being sold for currently in the OC? So we had referenced earlier in the show, about half of homes right now are selling for more than list price. But are you seeing huge premiums, small premiums? What are you seeing out there, Jeff?
I missed the question. Sorry, I was reading something. Well, what was the on average? How much over asking price are properties being sold? It really depends on price point. it's all relative.
Would you
Like
go
I,
so
for
far as to
example,
say, Jeb, that 50% is probably more towards the entry level versus the higher priced homes?
oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for example, I can give you a real life example. So we put an offer in on a property, a condo in Huntington Beach in the harbor, a couple days ago for a client, and there ended up being a couple of offers on the property. We went, price was at 869. We made an offer at 880, essentially what the seller would have netted out of the deal. So came in what, $11,000 above, which just over 1%. So not a huge jump over the asking price, but we didn't get accepted. And we were told, I was told that the offer that they accepted was considerably higher than the asking price. What does that mean? Hard to say. But we were all cash and ready to go. And this one did have a loan, it sounds like, based on my conversation, but they were willing to offer more, and the seller was willing to take that risk and do it. So I think it depends on the property. It depends on the area. It depends on the market. I know once you get above 2 million, the market definitely slows down. Under a million, 1.5, depending on the market, still can be pretty hot, depending on the property and the area and everything, about that, right? So it's each to each his own when it comes to property, right? Not every single one's going to perform the same, but I would say that, as a buyer, still expect it to be competitive if you're under that median home price, which locally is about 1.2. Josh, we had this question earlier. I put it on here. It's not really something I think is either worth addressing at the moment, but it's a question we'll throw up just because he's asked it twice. I'm in escrow now, closing July 3rd. Should I lock now at 6.875 or wait? So we talked about next week. Well, starting tomorrow, really, we have a week full of data that could impact interest rates in a negative way, could impact them in a positive way. So, when asking somebody to lock, and again, that's about a month away from now. So what are your thoughts on answering that question?
I have two clients right now, both listeners to the show, and both opened escrow in the last week to 10 days, and both of them are holding for now for the reasons that we talked about. We went through the chart. We went through the data that's coming out. We went through what the projections are for that data. Is it likely to come out and be supportive of lower rates or higher rates? And they both have a risk tolerance. This is the most important part. They have a risk tolerance that they're comfortable with that. I talk to some people and they say, how would you feel if today is the rate is 6.75 and in 2 days at 6.875? I would feel terrible. That would be the worst thing ever. I'd be leaving all this money on the table. Then we probably should lock it. If you're comfortable with that being a potential outcome and you're hoping that it drops 0.25%, and we have a lot of data that could easily move us down 0.25% in the next week, and you want to get a look at that, I would wait. But most people are uncomfortable with the prospect. They can deal with lost opportunity more than they can deal with actual lost dollars.
That's fair. This question came from Steve. It's about a VA loan. Steve says, what are the limits on using the balance of a VA loan? Maybe explain what he's talking about there. I want to move out of my current home, which is $295,000 balance in Riverside, and move to a new primary residence in Orange County. I'm not selling my current residence. So what I gather from this is Steve is looking to keep his primary home that has a VA loan on it. And he's asking, can he use any additional entitlement to buy a new VA home? And if so, how much?
So this is called secondary entitlement or bonus entitlement. We talked about just a minute ago when we were talking about, could you use your deceased father's VA benefit? The VA entitlement is a guarantee of 25% of your loan amount. So we've got a couple of confounding factors here. So Steve is asking, my current home is $295,000 balance. The balance doesn't matter. The entitlement used is how much guarantee was used. So let's say that original loan amount was $400,000. Well, we would have used $100,000 of that balance. The other confounding factor that you have here is the calculation is much simpler in counties that are at or below the conforming loan limit of 766,550. If you come to Orange County, we can go above that up to $1 million. We have that county limit, and then you can go above that. So the answer is you absolutely can use VA financing. You absolutely do have remaining entitlement. That calculation is a little bit difficult and just takes 5-10 minutes to run through the numbers. We need some more information. So if you want to reach out, just send an email to info@theeducatedhomebuyer.com and we'll go through that. You can use the link below or shoot an email. If you send us the certificate of eligibility, or I can help you pull a certificate of eligibility, it'll give us the information and we can give you an exact number of how much you could buy in Orange County with zero down, or if you were to make a down payment, how high you could go.
All right, good stuff. All right. Love for Puppy says, can you explain if there's a mileage requirement to get a conventional loan on a new primary when departing a primary that you are going to rent out? So Josh, do I have to move a certain distance away in order to get a new conventional loan?
Sort of the question behind the question is FHA does have a requirement, conventional doesn't. So the FHA 100-mile rule, when they changed back in, was it 2014, 2015 to the newest underwriting manual, and they modernized the FHA guidelines, they came out with a crazy one that doesn't make an ounce of sense that says if you have a departing residence and you need to use rents to offset the payment to qualify, you have to be moving 100 miles away. Even if it's a conventional loan on that departing residence, to use FHA financing, you have to move up to 100 miles away. Conventional has no such requirement. You can use that departing residence. A very recent change in the last 12 months, we can only use the rents from that departing residence to offset that payment unless you have a history as a landlord. So if you own other rentals, we can give you credit for rent above and beyond what the monthly payment is. If you don't have that, you can only offset. I guess the last thing I'd say on that is it has to make sense. So if you live in, 5,000 square foot oceanfront estate and you say you're going to go 10 miles inland and buy a 1-bedroom condo, they're going to look and go, it doesn't really make sense. It does have to make sense, a plausible reason as to why you would move from the current residence to the other. And it doesn't mean it has to be a superior. It has to make sense as to why we're doing it.
All right. Maria asked, can you still get approved for a mortgage if you become recently self-employed, Josh?
Well, let's define recently. In general, you're going to have at least a year, and where it falls in that year is going to be important. Let's say you become self-employed here in June of 2024. In June of 2025, you'll have been self-employed for a year, but we will only have 1 year of self-employment on your tax return. It's going to be really, really hard to tell how much money you are making. So going from self-employed to a W-2 employee, never a problem. We use the self-employment as the work history and the W-2 employment as the current guaranteed wages going forward. So as long as it's not variable income, we can use it. But the flip side, going from an employee to self-employed, you're going to need at least a full year on that tax return, and the safe bet is 2 years. But we do them less. Again, Jeb, the gentleman we're talking to earlier today, he's got a year and a half on the job, but we have a full year of tax return. It was in the same in the same line of work that he was in before, so it can definitely be done in less than 2 years. But you're going to need a full year and hopefully a full year on the tax return.
No, good stuff. This is the part in the show where we ask a favor. If you find any value at all, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. In fact, I said I wasn't going to do that, and I'm not going to do it. So Josh, I'm going to move on. I was going to ask for another favor, but I'm not going to do it this evening. It's not the right time. No says, my real estate agent informed me that Lennar won't cover the commission. He asked if I am able to pay the commission. Red flag, ? Thoughts, ? So is it a red flag? Is it, it's not a red flag. Here's the thing. So real estate, going into it, the agent should have had an idea about the commission structure. A lot of new construction companies, have a history of when the market is good, for them, rather they don't pay commissions, and when the market sucks, as a builder, when it's a buyer's market, rather they will pay a commission. Now we're kind of in this weird time in the market where commissions are making headlines and going to become more and more of a topic. but it's not a red flag. But if your agent is providing value to you, if they are truly helping you through the process, and doing, their job, I think it's worth paying them a commission. If you have it. If you don't have it, you might be able to try to negotiate it with the builder, but it's one of those things that this is one going forward. Before you ever show or see property with an agent, you're going to have this document signed, regardless of where you are in the country. Starting, I think it's August 17th, if that's still the date. You're going to have to sign a buyer agreement that talks about, responsibilities of that buyer. It's going to talk about commission, what they're expecting, and you're going to have to sign it. And you're going to have to do that before ever looking at property. So this will never be a concern in the future. But while it's not intact quite yet, it's a discussion that needs to be had. So hard to say. It's something you got to discuss.
Let me add some color to the conversation here, Jeb. Very VIP past clients of yours and mine. They've since moved to Tennessee. They had family join them from California in Tennessee, referred them over. We helped them get their credit scores up 50 points so that they could get qualified. And of course, they go out, they're looking at resale homes, and they walk into a Lennar home and they fall in love. So we go through, we give them the numbers, and they go, well, Lennar's making us get pre-approved with their lender. So Lennar does that, and they said, okay, we can only help with closing costs if you use our lender. We've talked about it on the show. A lot of times they'll say, we'll give you $20,000 to use our lender. Well, homes are selling pretty robustly in Tennessee, and they're like, oh, no, we're not going to give you any money, but it'll appraise for more. So if you need $20,000, we'll add $20,000 to the purchase price, but we'll only do it if you use our lender. And I said, well, our lender is $5,000 cheaper in costs and a 0.5% lower rate. Like, well, sorry, it is what it is. So several rounds of back and forth, they finally got them to match our terms, but they made them go through their lender just for the right of paying $408,000 for a $399,000 house so they could get in with the amount of money that they had available. And relating back to this, not to hijack it and take it to a mortgage question, but they are represented by a realtor, and they went into the Lennar homes on their own and didn't take their realtor with them, and they had registered at Lennar. And when they went back, they said, no, you were here and you did not tell us you were working with a realtor. And although they do cooperate with realtors, they said you didn't follow the rules and they're not paying their
and
realtor.
That's not abnormal. That is normal. Like, that is how builders typically work. If you are a buyer and you show up to new construction, whether you have an agent or not, and you show up and you don't and your agent's not there with you really on that first showing, most builders won't pay that agent any commission. It's just, and that's how it's always been. Now, I will tell you, if and when the market changes, that will change. But for the time being, that's what it is. All right. Josh, are we done? Is that it?
No, circle back. Steve followed up and says the calculation is based off the balance of the existing VA loan. No, it is not based off the balance of the existing VA loan. It's the amount of entitlement that was used based off of the loan when you purchased the home. So again, a lot of moving parts there. Reach out. Happy to go through it with you. It takes about 5 minutes. We get you a dead on number of what you can buy max in OC and max with zero down in OC.
All right, guys, still looking for some additional questions here. So while we're doing that, Josh, plug again the forecast that we did this past week on the podcast. Be sure and check it out. Also, guys, we recorded today. A lot of you guys have questions about the loan estimate, how to read it, what means what, how to compare lenders, all of that stuff. And we've talked about it before without actually showing the disclosure itself. Today, we filmed an episode, which is going to be next week's episode on the Educated Homebuyer, where we walk through the loan estimate. We take a real life example and we walk through each section of it and tell you what each one of those fees means, what it means for you. Can you shop that fee? How do you compare that fee when looking at another lender? Just really breaking it down so that, it's probably the most complex of the documents that you're going to see, but it's only complex because they make it complex. It's really, it should be pretty easy to decipher. And so we make it that way for you. So if you're interested, you're buying, you're selling, not selling. If you're buying and want to know what to pay attention to next week's episode. So Josh, have we gotten anything while I was talking?
Yeah, we didn't catch this one earlier. So something 2013 says, I'm a first-time home buyer trying to buy in the Kaufman County area. Without the state, we don't know where Kaufman County is. Have plenty of money
Let's
to pay
make it
down.
up. I think it's
Where is Kaufman
Oklahoma.
County? Georgia.
Are you guessing or are you?
Georgia. I'm guessing.
Okay. I like Oklahoma.
Has plenty of money to pay a down payment, a down deposit, but houses are way overpriced. Should I get a house or wait? So we got two questions there. They're overpriced compared to what? Overpriced says in the future, they're going to be less. So if I wait, I'm going to save money. Overpriced, meaning more expensive than you would like to pay. We've gone through this over and over and over. The number is different and it is local to your area. There are prices or places in the country where prices are dropping and you would say it is overpriced. It's going to be cheaper if I wait 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. There are other parts of the country. Now, if you're in Kaufman County, Connecticut, I don't know if there is such a thing. They're flying off the shelves and they're going above list price. And if you think it's overpriced today, it's going to be more overpriced next year. So you always have to go back. Should you buy now or wait? Well, what if you're going to wait? What are you going to do? Are you able to save? Are you able to invest? Are you going to be able to buy in the future? Is the time right in your life? Do you have a long-term time horizon? Are you settled in your job? Are you settled in your relationship? Those are all the things you know. But when you say homes are overpriced, that just means they're more expensive than what you would like to pay, unless you have solid insights and data to tell you that homes are going to be less expensive in the near future.
Yeah, Josh, and I didn't miss that question. I skipped that question for the very nature of it, asking us whether or not they should buy or wait. It's it's a decision that you guys have to make. We can't help you with that. We can give you the information that's happening, and you can make a decision. Sometimes rational, sometimes irrational decision.
And I just wanted to push back on that thought that homes are overpriced. Homes are expensive. Like you showed the chart, Jeb. We're up 48% in 4.5 years. So yeah, they're really expensive relative to where they were 2 years ago, 5 years ago. But does that mean they're overpriced? Not if they're going to be more expensive 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now. So you have to make that decision as well. More expensive than you want to or can pay does not mean they are overpriced. It means they're expensive.
All right, good stuff. Jonathan says, can you refinance a cash out refi? Yes, you can refinance a refinance of a refinance of a refinance if you want to refinance, right? No, you can refinance as many times the same loan over and over again, assuming you qualify for that loan. It's got to have a net tangible benefit to you, and it's just got to make sense, right? I mean,
I don't think he's asking this, Jeb, but I'll throw this out there.
Yep.
Cash out refinance is more expensive than a rate and term refinance. So you cannot, people always ask us, well, I just bought or I just refinanced. When can I refinance again? You cannot turn around and do a cash out refi, then a month later do a rate and term refinance to get the better terms. You have to season that. And I don't have the guideline up in front of me. It's either 6 or 12 months. And I think it's 12. I think it was recently updated to 12 months. You have to wait after cash out before any additional refinance would not be considered cash out.
All right. Here's a comment from Loaded 876 says, I'm offering $50K over asking, still getting my offer rejected. So Loaded, I'd love to know where you're located in the country. City, county would be excellent, and price point. If you could let me know, that would be very helpful, because that stuff follows into to the conversation here and kind of helps us.
I want to know if that's their truck. That truck in the picture is awesome. I want that.
Tanisha says, do you think that the NACA program is a good program? Or what about FHA? This is going to be my first time buying and I just don't know what to do. Can you help? So what I would advise you to do, Tanisha, is I don't know. I'm not familiar with NACA in a way that I've ever helped a client get the program. I did a video on it probably 2 to 3 years ago now. And the gold of that video is not what I talk about in the video at all, but more so the comments. Go read the comments on that video. So if you go to my channel and you search that program, read the comments, because the comments are people who either went through the program, tried to go through the program, and it's their experience with it. What I will say from just kind of in summary, more people were unhappy with the program, the timelines, everything about it, more so than there were people that were happy that they went through it. It is a long, tedious process for most people, depending on where you're located in the country. It could be almost impossible because of price point. But again, I can't talk on it in detail because there are some success stories. There are people that really happy that they were able to get it with, no money down. But there's equally as many people pissed off because they wasted the time dealing with it to start.
I would say 10 to 1. Those success stories are out there. You have them in your comments thread there on that video. So there are success stories. There are people that have had success with the program, but for every one of those, you're going to get 10 people tell you it was stupid. I wasted years, left money on the table, and should have just gone with FHA to begin with. But again, neither Jeb nor I have any firsthand experience. That's just talking to people who attempted to use the program over the years.
Loaded followed up and said they're in Kaufman, Connecticut, Josh, where you said. Now they're in Connecticut, which we've showed that map earlier. Hot market at the moment. We've talked about it here on the show. The Northeast is still gangbusters when it comes to housing. Just in Hartford counties where they're located. It's low supply, high demand. So to be expected. And it sounds like, you're probably going to be going up against that for a while, just based on the information that I'm reading at the moment. Josh, excuse me. We got a success story here. Weiss just bought or just did a final inspection on a home they bought in California, LA County, FHA at $1.1 million. So congratulations to you on getting that done. Farmer Press says, how do I protect myself from builders' preferred lenders giving me the old switcheroo? I was using a lender I trusted, but I have to use builder's preferred lender to get about $13,000 of credits. So Josh kind of talked about this a moment ago. Is there a way around that, or are you kind of stuck?
So the only way that someone can change terms on you, going back to the episode we recorded today, Jeb, is that loan estimate.
Yep.
The loan estimate sets tolerances for how much things can change. But if it's a new build and you got 4 months, 6 months, 8 months before it's going to be done, you're probably not going to lock that interest rate. So they can tell you, hey, these are the terms today, but it's floating. And the interest rate and the points charged for that interest rate can change. And we talk about when you're going to shop for a rate, you have to shop all of those lenders, not just on the same day, but within the same 1 to 2 hour time frame to make sure you are absolutely doing an apples to apples comparison. I have not heard of a builder's lender doing a bait and switch on anyone. I have heard about them forcing people to lock before they wanted to lock, not letting people lock when they wanted to lock. So your best bet is you have a trusted lender, have your trusted lender keep a file open. And when the time comes to lock that interest rate, have them review that loan estimate for you of what they're locking in and say, is this competitive? Is this what we can do? We use the example of my friend. She was getting $30,000 from the builder. It actually equated to about $18,000 in the real world, but it was still real money. So if they go, well, this $13,000 really is more like 10 or 8, still better than using your friend or trusted lender and not getting $8,000 or $10,000.
All right, good stuff. Josh, Deerfield Disc Golf says, are there lots of first-time homebuyer programs and grants in different states based off of location? And the answer is yes. Depending on where you're located in the country will determine what programs are available to you. And even go a bit granular, different cities, different counties have different programs. Here in the state of California, there are different programs available. The problem with a lot of stuff in California is that it runs out of funding, and it runs out of funding pretty quickly. And so while there might be programs out there, there's typically, they're difficult to get in some cases. But states like Texas, Josh, we've talked about, has, a bountiful, has a ton of different programs for first-time home buyers, grants, that sort of thing that are out there. You just got to find somebody that's knowledgeable. Yeah.
Well, Jeb, those clients in Tennessee, they thought they were going to be about $5,000 short. They had a family member. They had 3 family members that were giving gifts. One just backed out and said, hey, sorry, we're just not able to do it. So they thought they were about $5,000 short. We started researching programs in Tennessee. Tennessee has an awesome program that's available almost everywhere in the state. And they were going to be able to get like up to $20,000 at 5% interest over either a 10 or a 15-year repayment. You're like, that's cheaper than the first mortgage. So it's basically turns into 100% financing at a rate better than what your first is. At that point, I would almost tell all of my buyers, this is a better deal. It's an FHA first. You can get the FHA from us or any other lender to get the best FHA terms and then throw this behind it. I'm like, if I had this in California, we could do a jillion of these loans. But It really varies. Texas has some awesome stuff. We had a buyer reach out from the show in San Antonio, and we start looking at programs. San Antonio income limits on that, but if you met the income limits, it was a fantastic program. So if you need it, definitely have your lender research programs available in your area. In California, the programs either suck or they're like purple unicorns. That, as Jeb said, they have $100,000 of total funding and it's a 4-year waiting list. But in other parts of the country, there are very good programs.
That's a Josh. Did any of your clients get accepted for the Dream for All?
No one knows yet.
Oh,
No
they don't
one
know
knows yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Any day, they're supposed to be letting everyone know. I think we had probably 20, 25 people reach out, 6 or 8 go through the process. And I think only 4 of them actually applied. Many people just talked themselves out of it. So it'll be interesting to
I hope
see,
all 4 get it.
because it was supposed to be, they opened up, did they open up the application in April or May? Anyways, they were supposed to take them for 30 days. And I think it was through April, starting April through May. And then they were going to take a couple weeks and vet these. And what they said they were going to do in terms of vetting those, I'm like, there's no way you get through all those applications in 30 days. And that's been the case. So we're expecting any time to find out if anyone gets the money.
All right. Neto says, let's say I do a 10% down payment. Is it better to do a conventional and later refi, or FHA and later refi? So let's just forget the refi thing because it's the same on both. But 10% down, conventional, FHA. I guess, Josh, looking at it, depends. I mean, debt to income ratio depends on how much you're trying to qualify for. One could allow you a little bit more versus another. One, there's several things that go into this. Credit score, I think, would matter big time.
FHA is more flexible. FHA for most borrowers is going to have a lower payment. If you have 2 borrowers putting 10% down, they both have 800 credit scores, you might be able to have a slightly lower payment than FHA. But FHA is going to have the lower payment. It's going to be more flexible, but it also has an upfront mortgage insurance premium. So cool, I put 10% down, but then I add 1.75% of the loan back on top of there. So it's not possible within the context of this show. It takes about 10 minutes to go through this with a borrower to be able to give them valid and accurate answers based off of all of those things. Both programs are very good. When you start getting to 10%, starts leaning more towards conventional. But if you get a 680 credit score, FHA is still going to be the better option at that point. So if you're interested, use the link down below, get connected with us if it's in one of the 18 states that I cover. And if it's not an area that my team can, we've got a trusted group that we can get you connected with to get you the right answers and comparing what you should do.
All right, good stuff. Marcus just made a comment, says always enjoy the great content. So appreciate the comment, Marcus. Appreciate you sticking around and watching the content. It definitely helps. Me says, will new houses being built around me, my house, increase or decrease value? Hard to say. I have no idea where you live. I don't know what kind of houses they are, but typically speaking, when new construction is being done, depending on the market, I don't know that it would decrease your value, but I don't necessarily know it's going to increase your value either. It has a lot more to do with just more than just the houses being built. What's coming to the area, shopping centers, schools, all of that stuff matters and could affect it. But again, it's without knowing more, I think it's a difficult question to really give you any context on.
When they ask that question, Jeb, I think about it. Those houses, 3-4 years ago, they built over by my house and they're now worth $1 jillion. And I look at it and I go, I don't think it has any impact. Maybe not the best example, because what is a pocket of 50 homes built in an area of thousands of homes? And I don't know that it had any impact on my house. Those are really expensive, and my house isn't nearly as expensive.
Yeah, I mean, where it could have a negative impact is if it's new construction, similar square footage as to your house, existing construction, and that some reason they're selling for less than what you thought your house is worth. That could be a problem. But most of the time, that's not the case, right? New construction is going to sell more than existing construction in most markets out there. So if anything, it's not going to hurt you, but I don't necessarily know that it's going to change your value either. Josh, Andre followed up with another
very
question.
Different name.
Adam and Andre are not the same name.
Not the same.
It says, can you float down a Cal FHA rate? Cow half.
Because I was able to do research ahead of time here while you were answering the other question, I know the definite answer here. Cal HFA does not offer a float down option on rate locked loans. I thought that was the answer, but it's directly from their website. Once you lock it, that's the rate you're getting.
All right. No has a question, says, how much is Mello-Roos? So what is Mello-Roos? Let's start there. So Mello-Roos is essentially an additional tax. It's built like California has a Mello-Roos. And what it is it's typically when they build out a new community. It's an infrastructure tax, if you will. It's bonds. And what they do is they take out bonds to pay for things like schools, streets, sewer, plumbing, all of that stuff, whatever's going to build out that area. And then they assess it to the new buyers over a period of time. Here in California, most of them 25, 30 years, if I had to guess, somewhere in that ballpark. And after 25, 30 years, whatever the time frame is, it falls off. You no longer pay that additional tax. So how much is it? It depends. Here in Orange County, where we are, in some of the new home markets, I would say the average property tax here in Orange County is probably about 1.1%. I know areas that have as high as 2%, over 2%, with the Mello-Roos and everything involved. And then I know some that are, 1.5, 1.6%. So it's just going to vary based on the community, based on how much it took to build it out and all that good stuff. Anything to add on that, Josh?
No, it's that's a pretty good summation of it, but it's case by case. Have your realtor do the research for you and find out exactly what it is.
And the best way to do is, if you're buying existing construction that has it, just go pull the tax. Oh my God, I can't talk. The tax records from the county, the actual tax statements, and it'll have the full tax basis on there, right? So it'll show you what goes to what. So, the basis is 1%, and then the bonds, blah, 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 add up to all of this different percentage, and you know what the full percentage is, and then you just multiply it by the price that you're purchasing, divide it by 12, and that'll give you a really good idea of, total and what you'll have there. So hopefully that is helpful. Josh, it's that point in the show. It's been an hour where we ask again, found any value, hit the thumbs up. And if Josh and I can be of assistance to you, Josh does loans, I sell real estate. Josh can cover you pretty much California and 17 other states across the United States. He would love to help. And if you're shopping for a loan, if you need somebody to pre-qualify you, that's a good place to start. That referral link at the bottom. And if you're looking to buy real estate here locally, I would love the opportunity to help. And if I can't help, I can refer you to somebody that can. In fact, just referred one of our listeners today to someone in Hendersonville, North Carolina, to a contact out there that I have. And, on average, probably 5 to 10 a month that I send out to people across the U.S. And a lot of these people ended up buying and using those real estate agents. So if we can be of assistance, let us know.
Jeb.
All right. Yep.
This is part of the show. I'm going to try and make you feel bad.
All right.
Andre follows up and says, thanks for the content.
Is this Adam?
I've been following since Jeb had 10,000 subs. Great content. He's been following you from the very beginning, tells you what great 10, content it is, and you call him Adam. He's one of your VIP.
You know why I called him Adam? Because Adam Green. Remember the guy that used to go to the gym with us? Adam Green, a long time ago. He was in the military, moved to Tennessee. I see a Green because on Facebook, I immediately think I'm reading Adam Green. So that's why I said Adam. I said Andre. Nevertheless, you don't care, but you've been here a long road. It's been a long road from 10,000 to 100,000 subs. So I appreciate that. That's
closing in on 110 now. It's been here for the last 100,000.
Getting closer, but it wouldn't be without you guys, and for that I'm grateful. So thank you, Josh. We don't really have really don't have any questions here. We got a couple comments, so I think it's that time.
It's Wing Wednesday. It's Wing Wednesday. Is that what you're saying?
It could be Wing Wednesday if we had a good wing spot. I mean, Joe's is good, but we need a true wing spot.
It's no wing nuts. If any of you looking, to invest in a new restaurant?
Yeah, if you're looking to open a restaurant here locally, open a wing spot. I'm telling you, there's so many people that are pissed that Wing Nuts isn't around. If you do it right, you will be busy. You will make good money. I just don't want to be in the restaurant business.
Wingnuts
It's a
had
tough business.
spectacular wings and terrible management, so it went under. But the wings were amazing, and now every wing option we have is awful. And you look it up, and they'll be opening up a new wing place, and you look and go, maybe this is the one. And you go, this is most assuredly not the one.
No,
So
but
if you
everybody
have the
does it
one,
the same. It's all fried wings. It's all like dip them in a bunch of crap so that you can't actually taste the wing. The wing's like the side, No, you got to go back to wing nuts. If you know what we're talking about, that's the good
if you
stuff.
know, you know.
If you know, you know. Anyway, guys, thank you for being here. Like and subscribe. We'll see you next week. Until then, adios.
Amigos.